The Dell XPS 15 isn't exactly advertised as a gaming laptop. However, as it's available with GTX 1650 graphics, it should still be possible to play some games on it. So let's find out just how well it performs in 20 games and also compare it with some other laptops to see how it stacks up. I've got one of the highest spec versions of the new Dell XPS 15 7590 laptop. There's an Intel i7-9750H CPU, Nvidia GTX 1650 graphics, and 32GB of memory running in dual channel with a 4K OLED screen. However, I've tested all games at 1080p as this hardware won't be capable of 4K gaming. The XPS 15 is available in quite a few different configurations, including i5 or even i9 CPU. You can find examples and updated prices linked in the description. The Dell software doesn't offer much in the way of performance modifications. I've done all testing with the Power Manager set to Ultra Performance for best results. We'll only be covering gaming performance in this video, so if you're new to the channel, you'll definitely want to get subscribed for the upcoming thermal testing and full review. Let's start out by going through all 20 games at all setting levels, then afterwards we'll see how the XPS 15 compares with some other laptops. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode, and it was still possible to run with above a 60 FPS average with medium settings. However, in my testing, I still thought high and ultra were quite playable, probably as there was minimal difference between 1% low performance. Control was very playable with low settings, which is the setting preset that was required to play with 60 FPS averages. Medium settings felt a bit worse, and I wouldn't want to use ultra on this hardware. To be fair though, in my personal opinion, I think the game still looks good even at low anyway. Borderlands 3 was tested using the game's built-in benchmark tool. And this was another test where the low setting preset was needed in order to score 60 FPS or higher. I think we're starting to see a trend. Apex Legends was tested with either all settings at maximum or all settings at the lowest possible values, as it doesn't have predefined setting presets. In this game, even with all settings maxed out, it was still a playable experience. However, given the competitive nature of the game, lower settings for higher 1% low performance would be preferable. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the built-in benchmark, and was another test where low settings was required to hit the 60 FPS sweet spot. And this is one of the games we'll use to compare with other laptops soon. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was also tested with the benchmark tool. Yet again, the low setting preset was needed for 60 FPS in this test. Wolfenstein Youngblood was tested using Vulkan, and so far I've found this game to run quite well on basically anything. Max settings wasn't actually that bad. However, the second highest preset was much better and able to average a solid 60 FPS. Far Cry New Dawn was tested with the built-in benchmark. Once more, the low setting preset was needed for 60 FPS. Although this is typically a CPU-heavier test, the lowest 1650 GPU is giving lower results as that's the main limitation here. Fortnite was tested with the replay feature, and as a less demanding game, even epic settings was playing with 60 FPS, so definitely usable and honestly just fine given we've got a 60Hz screen anyway. However, much higher was possible with lower settings should you wish to further reduce input lag. Overwatch is another well-optimized game and was tested in the practice range. Again, even with the highest epic setting preset, it was possible to average above 60 FPS. Actually, this was just hit for the 1% low result, but again, much higher is available with lower settings. CSGO was tested using the Euletical FPS benchmark, and as a game that depends primarily on CPU power, the results aren't all that much lower compared to a laptop with higher graphical power. Don't get me wrong, there is a difference, it's just smaller compared to most other games. Dota 2 was tested playing in the middle lane, and as another primarily CPU-heavy game, the results at lower settings aren't really that much different compared to other laptops with the same CPU. At ultra settings, where we're presumably a bit more GPU bound, it was a little lower now. However, 150 FPS is still plenty for this game. Rainbow Six Siege was tested with the built-in benchmark. Even the maximum ultra setting preset was able to hit 60 FPS for the 1% low, and that's with a 100% render scale, so another game that should play quite nicely on this machine. The Division 2 was also tested with the built-in benchmark, and a 60 FPS average was only just achievable with the medium setting preset. However, we could get much higher with the low preset, where even the 1% low was now around the 60 mark. PUBG was tested using the replay feature, and high settings was still able to run over 60 FPS, a pretty good result for a game that's been labelled as poorly optimized. However, I really think that's been turned around over the last year or so. Either way, with very low settings, it was still possible to reach 100 FPS and above. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested with the built-in benchmark, and although this is generally more of a CPU-heavy test, the lower GPU is letting us down a bit and stopping a 60 FPS average even with the low setting preset. Watch Dogs 2 is a resource-heavy game, but I think it still plays fine with a stable 30 FPS, so it was working fine for me with very high settings. However, Ultra was noticeably worse in comparison, so I wouldn't use it. Though if you do want higher, 60 FPS was hit at medium. The Witcher 3 was playing okay with high settings while still looking good. Medium settings was closer to 60 FPS, but not by much, while Ultra settings was noticeably a bit more stuttery in comparison. F1 2019 was tested using the game's benchmark tool, and the highest setting preset was still able to average 60 FPS here. However, stepping down even one level almost doubled this. Strange Brigade was tested with Vulkan using the game's benchmark tool. This one doesn't need powerful hardware to run, which is why almost 60 FPS averages were possible with the Ultra preset. Now we'll take a look at how this config of the Dell XPS 15 compares with other laptops. Use these results as a rough guide only, as they were tested at different times with different drivers. In Battlefield 5, I've got the XPS 15 highlighted in red near similarly spec'd machines. I haven't tested that many GTX 1650 laptops yet, but out of the ones I have covered, surprisingly the XPS 15 was out in front, at least in terms of average FPS. I thought it was interesting that the 1% low was below that of the L340, considering that machine has single channel memory. However, 1% lows are usually all over the place in this title. These are the results from Far Cry 5 with Ultra settings in the built-in benchmark. This time the XPS 15 was behind the Aorus 5 with same specs, which I think makes sense as this is more of a CPU heavy test. I've only just started doing the thermal testing, make sure you're subscribed for that video, but CPU performance in this machine is lower than I expected as Dell seemed to prioritize cool and quiet over performance. These are the results from Shadow of the Tomb Raider with the built-in benchmark at highest settings. It's only 1 FPS behind the Aorus 5 with similar specs now, and 1 FPS ahead of the L340, so quite similar when compared to the other 1650 laptops that I've covered on the channel. Despite not being a gaming laptop, the GTX 1650 graphics is definitely making the XPS 15 capable of gaming. Although most modern games at higher settings didn't go too well, low to medium settings was definitely playable in most games. It is also possible to get the XPS 15 without the GTX 1650 graphics, in which case only the Intel graphics will be available. This will perform significantly worse compared to what I've shown here. So if you're doing graphically intensive tasks, such as gaming for instance, you'll definitely want to consider the GTX 1650 option. Let me know what you thought of the gaming performance from the Dell XPS 15 laptop down in the comments. I'll test out the thermals in depth in an upcoming video, and the full review is still to come. So if you're new to the channel, consider getting subscribed for those, as well as for future tech videos like this one.